Okay, thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Jacques and I am with the customer success team here at Canny. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. We're going to be talking about fostering collaboration in Canny. Few things to know before we get started. Here's basically the agenda. I always like to start with why, so we'll be talking why use Canny for collaboration, going into our tools, strategies, a quick recap, and then we'll go to Q&A, excuse me there. So please do be using that Q&A button in Zoom. You should see that here in the Zoom app as you have questions. I'll probably be repeating that. We have people coming in and out, and we will be sending out a recording afterward for everyone who is joining us today. So if you registered for the webinar, we will be sending that out here shortly. All right, so let's dive right in here. So why collaborate with Canny? Well, first off, requests are associated with an individual user. You know, who is this? Where do they work? Why do they want this? You have that context around this user and their needs. You can understand the level of priority. How important is this? Is this something that they're willing to pay extra for? So you have a sense of how your users are approaching this particular request or this idea. You also get to see the stakeholders at a glance. So not just the clients and the people who voted on it, but also my teammates. Who on my team is responsible for driving this forward? Who owns this? And then you can easily bring end users into the conversation. I do want to take a quick second here because this is kind of an underrated feature of Canny. Some of our larger customers kind of see, oh, we didn't anticipate how much value we would get out of that. But yeah, let's say I have a post that has 50 votes. I can go ahead and when it's time to start work on it, I can say, okay, so here is how I'm thinking of approaching this. Hey, you 50 people who voted on this, what do you think about this approach? And you can get that additional feedback. So you can have that one-to-many conversation and get that feedback in from the people who put their hands up and said, hey, I'm interested in this. Let me know about progress. That way I'm not irritating the entire user base with something that may not be relevant to them, but I'm targeting people who said, hey, yes, I want this, please let me know. So very, very helpful to have that, that aspect. So just a reminder again, I see more people are coming in here as we go. Welcome everyone. We are going to be doing Q&A here in a bit, so please be using that Q&A button. And again, we are recording today's session, so if you're registered, you will be getting a recording afterward. So let's dive into admin roles. So this is one function that we have that is very helpful for collaboration. So basically, when you're inviting your teammates, you can decide, hey, is this person going to be a contributor, manager, or owner? So an owner is someone who has full admin privileges. They can change the billing, they can connect integrations, they can do anything and everything. A manager, that's a little more limited. They have access to manage feedback, so they can change the status of a post, they can delete a post if necessary, do things like that, but they don't have access to some of those back-end tools. And then a contributor, this is just someone who is typically on the support team or on the sales team, someone who is taking feedback in from a customer and then adding that on the customer's behalf and contributing internal comments. So clarifying, hey, I'm going to add some context here around what this customer said. So those are the three main roles here that we have. There are billing implications, by the way, I should mention. So for owners and managers, we do cap those on our plans. So, and it's just the grand total, by the way. So if you have 2 managers and 3 owners, or 2 owners and 3 managers, it's still a total of 5. So we do cap those, but contributors are unlimited on our plans. So good to keep that in mind. We have a full explainer in our help docs. So basically they ensure that everyone has the permissions they need to do their job. And make sure that they don't have the permissions they don't need. So it prevents accidents and mistakes by limiting access to certain functions. But good thing to keep in mind is that all admins can leave internal comments. And we have, users, ClickUp, for instance, has, I think, 600 contributors and a few dozen owner managers. So you can have a very big team on Canny, all contributing, all adding their voice here on the back end. But not everybody needs the same level of permission. So feel free to go nuts with contributors. You can have as many as you want, admins and managers. Those are what's capped. So moving on here, we'll touch on ownership. And just a reminder for those of you just joining us, be using that Q&A button, and we are recording today's session. You will be getting a video on that. So ownership, this basically lets you determine, okay, who is responsible for driving this forward. So in this case, I can see dark mode. You know what? We're going to assign this to Elaine. I can assign this to Jerry, for instance. But no, you know what? Let's go ahead and keep it with Elaine. This is more in her wheelhouse. And something I can do also is I can go ahead and see, okay, who owns what? What is Elaine currently working on? So I can just search for Elaine, oops, and pull up and see, okay, what is currently on her plate? Where are these things at? What's assigned to me? What doesn't have an owner at all? So you can go ahead and go through those posts and understand, okay, who is responsible for driving this forward on my team? That is a key part of collaboration, is knowing who is the person that I need to talk to about this. So ownership really is helpful in that. You can designate an owner for each post. You can quickly filter the posts that you own and identify posts without an owner. Hey, is this just kind of floating out there? Let's assign it to Bob or Fred or George or Elaine. So we'll go ahead and get that. Road mapping. This is a very, very big one, especially for newer teams. This is a huge part of collaborating with Canny here. So on the roadmap, we have one company that has, I think it's Projo, with something like 50 different roadmaps here. But the roadmap, this is a huge part of collaborating in Canny, and this is going to be very key for cross-team understanding, everybody on the same page. So basically, once I decide, okay, let's work on this, 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 and this, now what order should we work on this? So in the roadmap, you can set up all the impact factors that you want to weigh. You can decide how much you want to weight them. And then we divide that by an effort score. The effort score is usually going to be set by the engineer who's actually going to be working on this. I can say, hey, this is going to take me 5 weeks. So let's make that a 5 out of 10. It's good to have a rubric for the effort score so that you have some understanding of the timeline for that. But you can go through, set up, okay, here are all the things that we need to weigh out before we tackle something. And then I can say, okay, security has gone through and done their review. That's checked off. Design has gone through and done their review. That's checked off. We know how much is going to increase our storage costs. Support has rated the impact it's going to have. Marketability, competitive, maintenance. You know, how much is this going to do in terms of maintenance for the product team? And so the goal here is basically you get to the roadmap page, you sort the board, and the one with the highest score, we're going to work on that first. So dark mode, high impact, low effort, beautiful combination. Let's go ahead and send that out to Jira, to Asana, to ClickUp, GitHub, whatever you're using, Linear, whatever you have connected to Canny, you can go ahead and link it. And then that way, when it's linked to the Canny post, then as it goes through the process in ClickUp, in GitHub, and whatever, that feeds back to Canny, and it'll automatically update the Canny status and notify the users. It's a beautiful thing. So make sure you have those tools connected for the integrations here. Let's go ahead and see. So every post goes through its due diligence. Every department gets to have a say in the post and gets to contribute and say, yes, I've done my part for this post, here you go. And then you can assign ownership very quickly from that roadmap. So we've touched on the importance of assigning ownership, having someone who's responsible for getting that over the line and pushing it out to project management software so that it's linked up with the Canny post. So we're going to move on to internal comments. Just a reminder, be using that Q&A button, and you will be getting a video afterward here. So internal comments, this is huge for collaboration in Canny. The internal comments, these are not visible to users, hence internal, but with these, you can go ahead and have a little more context here. So someone from support can say, hey, be sure to configure for super long words with a lot of characters. We've had German companies complain about that, have very long words. So you can have those kind of discussions. You can also add additional context. So let's say someone on sales hops on to a phone call with this client, and that client goes into detail. Hey, I want this because I have this problem and it's costing me this and I need that. So your sales team can go ahead and add that additional context. You can upload screenshots that came in from support. And all of this is outside the user view. So it's okay if there's personally identifying information or if there's contract sensitive info, because it's just inside your team. This is not visible to the end users. If you want to make it visible to the end users, then you have to opt into that to make it public. And when you do a public comment, the author and the voters get an email. So if I, as an admin, comment on something, then everybody who voted on that is going to get an email saying, hey, Jacques commented on this, come take a look. So the internal comments, you can have those conversations with your teammates outside of the user view, add additional context. You can @mention people to make sure they get notified. They'll get an email when you use that @mention. So like you see here, Kramer @mentions Elaine. That's why it's bold and highlighted there. You can coordinate responses to comments. So when you're moderating, especially if you have like a support team or someone like that who is moderating the comments, you can say, hey, Bill, I know that you worked closely with this person. Is this a good response to their comment? I want to make sure. And then the teammate can say, hey, yeah, no, I've worked with this guy. Let's edit that to this. Or, hey, here's some additional context. So you can kind of coordinate responses here. And then, like I said, add further context, upload those screenshots, add those call notes, all that good stuff. So that way, when your product team goes to work on it, they have those notes right there from your sales team to understand, oh, this is why this client wants this particular thing. All right, so moving on to integrations. Integrations here, this is just an example from our Slack integration. I know I like the dark mode here, but what's happening here? So David Putty a while ago created a post called Hide Email Addresses. And then Newman just commented here to say, hey, +1 to this. This could be what prevents us from going with Vandalay. And so Kramer and Jerry are on it here. Hey, George, Jerry, pretty strong feedback here. Yeah, let's talk about requiring customers to share their users' email addresses. Let's address that. So you can have those kinds of conversations. You don't have to be in Canny to go ahead and have those, but this is the Canny bot letting you know, hey, this comment got created. So you can have some additional conversations even outside of Canny, but you have that context to understand, okay, this is in reference to this particular post. All right, so touching on integrations here, I should show you a list of some of these integrations. So I mentioned kind of the project management tools, Jira, ClickUp, Azure DevOps. If you're on the Microsoft tech stack, we have Microsoft products here, GitHub, Linear, Asana. We got more in the pipeline here for you. But these are so that you can link those to Canny and have those update automatically here. We also have communication tools. I come from a support background. I love the Canny intercom integration. This really saved me because now if a customer writes in with a question and they're like, oh, by the way, I would love it if you guys did X, I can be like, okay, let's add your vote to this Canny post for that, and then let's continue on with your question. So I have that context. I don't need to leave my inbox. I can just add it straight from Intercom. Zendesk is the same concept. Your sales team will probably adore Salesforce and HubSpot integrations here because they can actually link it to a deal. So, hey, this post that people want, let's link it to this deal because now I have this prospect, this potential customer telling me, hey, we need this before we sign a contract. And then that feeds into Canny so that you can actually see the opportunity value. So it's not just existing clients and what they want, but also potential clients, those opportunities that your sales team has identified. You can now take a look at your post and be like, okay, what is going to unlock new revenue for us? And boom, you have it right there because Canny gives you that opportunity value with the Salesforce and HubSpot integrations. So very, very useful. Of course, we do have other tools, Slack, Microsoft Teams to be notified about events in Canny. You can also create new posts and votes from Slack, for instance, and then Zapier segment pulls in stuff. So we have all kinds of integrations that you can connect to Canny, and these are going to be super helpful. One that I should also mention here is our Canny Chrome extension. It's a little blended into the browser colors. I have Canny on my browser colors, but this, you can be anywhere and just open up the browser extension and add feedback. So if you're in your email client, if you're on the client's website, if you're on LinkedIn, something like that, and you're having those conversations kind of way outside of Canny and you're not in any integration, you can still very easily add feedback with one click on a user's behalf using that Chrome extension here. So very, very useful, those integrations to seamlessly discuss that incoming feedback, create posts and votes outside of Canny, and really let every tool do what it does best. Canny is not, a tool that does everything because no tool really is the tool that does everything. So we're going to let the tools that you use for what they do best. We're just going to integrate with those and do what we do best, which is bring you that feedback, get you those insights, and help you understand the priority and what you should be working on, what is going to actually make an impact when you go to determine, okay, where should we deploy our development resources here? So let's talk strategies now. And just a reminder, please do be using that Q&A button here. We will be taking questions in just a minute, and we will be sending out a recording of today's webinar. So first off, standardize your process here. So when a user adds a screenshot, let's go ahead and make sure that that is an internal comment here. Before you surface a bug, check on the Canny board. If a VIP has a deal breaker request, add the deal breaker tag in Canny. So whenever you identify a good best practice, standardize that, write that down and say, hey, when this happens, we do this. So standardize your processes here. Nudge your teammates to use Canny when appropriate too. One of our larger clients, Mercury, they talk about the importance of getting the feedback to the right person. So this is where like that ownership is going to come in. But also if someone is, in Slack saying, hey, we should do this, be like, yeah, let me do /Canny and add your vote for that or create a post for that. Next time, just if you have an idea like this, throw it on the Canny board. So nudge your teammates when appropriate, help hold each other accountable. Next would be set up automations. So this is a big one here. Let me touch on our automations function. This is a fairly new feature, but it's going to be in your settings under automation. So I can create a rule. We're going to call this rule design, and let's apply this to our feature request board. So, if a post has any of the following words or phrases, let's say button, color, and menu, let's go ahead and add the UI tag to that post. So I'll create that rule and boom. Now, if someone creates a post and it mentions any of those 3 words, it's automatically going to have that tag. So what does that mean? It means that my team can now go in and very quickly pull the tag and say, hey, post without tags, or you know what, let's find anything with the UI post or the UI tag. And now that team is going to be very, very quickly able to find what they need to find. So set up those automations. And use private boards in Canny. So private boards allow you to, instead of showing it to everyone, you can say, okay, this is just for our team here. This is just internal. I want to hear from my fellow employees what they think. Or, hey, I want a board that we can share with this particular segment of our user base. We have, VIP customers, we have NDAs in place, so we can be a little more open. You can create those private boards separately, and that'll help you coordinate internally as a team. So that way I can understand, okay, what is sales needing? What is product needing? What is support, success, marketing? How is marketing? What do they want from the team as a whole? So it really helps with that collaborative spirit. And then finally, just remember, it's better to over communicate than to under communicate. So if you have to lean one way or the other, lean towards over communication. And that's where Canny is a really great repository of communications to be able to understand, okay, what are people really after? What is the context of this post? How much is this post worth to us in terms of MRR? So important things like that. All right. Key points, and then I promise we will get to Q&A here. I see we have some great questions rolling in. So first off, the goal is to have the information where it's needed. If you take nothing else from today's webinar, just remember that is the big one. Canny is going to have the information in the context where it was submitted and where it's needed. So Canny is where your team should be discussing implementation strategies. That feedback that came in, I can understand the context around it. How does this fit into what the client is trying to do, what our team is road mapping, what our departments are trying to coordinate on? And you don't have to be logged into Canny to use Canny effectively. We've got teams using 5, 6 different integrations with Canny that are knocking it out of the park. So if you have someone who's pretty obstinate about their tool set, just say, hey, we're not taking your tools away from you. We're just adding a little Canny widget into your tools. We're just connecting Canny and making sure that this tool is even more useful than it was now. All right. So with that, let's go ahead and shift gears over to Q&A. Let me go ahead and pull up our questions here. All right, so we sometimes notice that sales and product aren't fully aligned. Do you have any tips for making sure they communicate and focus on building features that will drive growth? So yeah, sales and product do need to be aligned because sales is telling you, hey, here's what the market wants. And then product is building for that. So this is where Canny posts come in, and private boards are going to be very useful for this because your sales team can say, hey, we need this because of X, Y, Z. Also, even public boards. So as user communications are coming in, your sales team is now armed with data to say, hey, this request from this user represents $20,000 of MRR, and it unlocks $8,000 in new revenue for us. So you have that data, and that's very compelling for the product team because they're like, oh, okay, so if we address this, we unlock new revenue. That helps us to invest in better tools, to get a new engineer on board, things like that. So you have to make sure that the teams are aware, hey, we're all really on the same team. But yeah, sales and product do need to coordinate, and Canny is definitely going to be helpful for that. Eli Winderbaum, welcome, welcome. Intercom integration is great. I have one feature request. I have a bot that launches when customers open up the chat. I make them choose between the following choices: question, issue, feature request. If they choose feature request, I'd love to insert an app, but that isn't an option. The option exists in other places, but not here, would be huge. Eli, thank you so much. I will add your vote here after the webinar. I think you're not the only person to request that, but yeah, we use Canny to build Canny. That is a huge part of our workflow here, so I'll be sure to go ahead and add your vote. All right, anonymous attendee, how do you handle collaborating with different user groups in Canny? This is a great question. This is where user segmentation really comes into play. So to kind of show you what that looks like here, let's go ahead and scrap all the other filters. And let's say user segmentation. Okay, long-term high value users, what are they after? So instead of 47 voters, I can see that long-term high value users, there are 11 here. So I can go ahead and export this list. I can talk to them individually, but usually it is going to be a matter of kind of addressing everyone more broadly, but understanding, okay, this particular post has a lot of long-term high value voters on it. Let's target this post and make sure that our long-term high value voters are acknowledged and seen, but without neglecting everyone else. So you can understand kind of behind the scenes here without telling your audience, hey, I know 80 of you are plebs. I'm only really addressing the other 5 of you. Definitely don't want to come off that way. So you can kind of understand, okay, this particular post has a lot from our long-term high value users. Let's go ahead and craft something that is going to be helpful for them without neglecting or alienating or feeling have other people feeling left out in your comments there. So user segmentation, bottom line, would be my best recommendation here. Eli, you're very welcome here. So looks like that is just about it for Q&A. All right, yeah. No, looks like we're all set. So yeah, thank you all so much for joining us today, really. It has been fantastic. We will be sending out the video of today's session afterward here. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to reach out. We have that live chat button on our website. I have been Jacques of the Canny Customer Success Team. Thank you so much for joining us for this webinar. We'll hope you'll join us for the rest of them. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.